Welcome back, Courtney.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh, I am so honored. And you're just such a vivacious personality. I love watching your Facebook lives and just the sheer authenticity and power you have with your voice in your messages. So I just know that you're going to bring value to today's episode on spirituality and maybe spirituality and the cross section between that and entrepreneurial mindset.
Mm. Thank you so much. I receive that with so much love and gratitude. It's sharing Pivot and my journey through it has become such a passion, and I just keep following that feeling. That's what Pivot has taught me to follow that feeling.
And for those who don't know, Courtney is a returning guest, and she has in the past shared with me her framework, which is called Pivot. But maybe you could just really give us the 1,000 foot view, and those who want to know more can always go back to that episode as well.
You got it. So Pivot really was born from my own healing journey. And I was using the word pivot because I was very dedicated and committed to being more aware of the mindset I carried, which came from a lifetime of anxious thinking, what if thinking, and worst case scenario thinking. And as I became aware that I could do something about it, and I could change my neural pathways and I could shift my mindset, started using the word pivot. But then I knew that pivot was meant to be bigger. And so one day I was kayaking on the Hudson River and I said a prayer and I just asked for my angels to give me a way that pivot could be used to be of more service to people. And I had a journal with me, and P became perspective. It's it that to give ourselves permission to be able to change our perspective. I became the inner work that we do, knowing that every answer we will ever need is within us, within our heart, within our soul, and that we never need to go external to know what truly resonates inside of our own hearts. The V became visualize. We often hear people say, "Well, I'll believe it when I see it." But the V in pivot is all about visualizing it. It's believing it and seeing it so that in the divine right timing, it will become part of your outer experience. And then the O, otherwise known as surrender, is the offering up or giving it over, and knowing that we are always divinely guided in whatever way resonates with us. We all have different belief systems, but just that idea that the divine presence is always with us, guiding us along the way. And the T was for trust. I'm going to learn to trust myself. I'm going to learn to trust my heart. I'm going to learn to trust that that guidance truly is there at a level that I never allowed it in, and also trust the timing of my life. And so I've just been practicing that methodology day in and day out. And the trust muscle that has grown since the last time you and I spoke, I'm now really living pivot. I really live in that surrendered state and that state of, I just trust that everything is always happening for me. I know that I am divinely protected, that God has my back, spirit, the universe, Jesus, our angels, our guides, whatever resonates with anyone listening. But just to be able to live in that state of trust and really follow everything that feels good and everything that makes me come to life has opened up new opportunities for me and brought synchronicities that I never thought would be possible. And I'm just so in awe of how magical life can be.
And just really tuning into that synchronicity element is so essential in, I think, our ability to trust the process,
Mm.
because yeah, it's like little breadcrumbs, somebody leaving the universe, just leaving for you, going, do you remember that this happened when you needed this, or something like that?
I couldn't agree more. For anyone listening who has experienced anxiety or worry, or who has a mindset that I've carried with me a lot of my life of waiting for the bomb to drop or waiting for that worst case scenario. For me, the synchronicities are the way we build that trust muscle. And when you think about it, when we connect to that divine presence in whatever way we connect to it, we're not able to have a one-on-one conversation. So there has to be a way for our angels, for God, for spirit to get our attention to say, we are here with you. You are not alone. And so one of the first things I did was I started asking for a sign because I needed that verification because I was so mindfully trying to release the anxiety and to live in a greater state of inner peace. And so I remember saying, okay, if you're there, thank you for showing me how good it can get. And I had always been a person of faith, but I had never invited it in that capacity. And so I remember saying, thank you for showing me a sign. And I set a sign, I gave whatever came to mind first. If I'm on the right path with this situation, and the next day, the sign comes up. And then I will tell you, there has not been a day within the last 5 years of my life where I have not had a synchronistic God incidence come into my life. And there is no reason for me to not trust that life has my back. And I am just in sheer awe of it every day. And every day I become more and more trusting of the process. So if you are someone and you are really wanting to build that trust muscle, or you want to just live in that state of ease, grace, and flow, ask for the presence of whatever you resonate with to show you a sign, and you will receive it. Ask and you shall receive. And it is just such a beautiful, peaceful feeling to know that we're not in this alone.
So much is just unpacked when you just said what you said. Like, I don't even know where to start because I have goosebumps. As I've often shared with you, have had anxiety, and I've come to a place of peace more recently, managing that anxiety. But it wasn't more than just a few months or weeks ago that I was still at the peak of it. But I asked for help multiple times through what we call the universe. And a lot of things have shifted. And one of the things that through synchronicity is I listen to your lives, and sometimes they're more I think what do you call it, spontaneous, so to speak. Sometimes you're in your car doing a reading, and so I happened to listen to you, and that was around the time I was also thinking about trusting the universe, trusting the process, which is really interesting because when you're in a state of anxiety, you're kind of locked in the mind. But when we talk about trust, we're dropping into the heart. And this has been a challenge because I'm so cerebral and so linear and logical. How do you reconcile those two for those who might be sometimes stuck again? Because we often sometimes think we made 10 steps forward and then we make 3 steps back, and it's hard to get unstuck.
You said that so beautifully, dropping from our head into our heart. Our ego mind, where our fear-based mind is really there to protect us. We can sometimes self-sabotage ourselves and say, I wish I didn't have these thoughts, but all of our fears come from some kind of trauma we've experienced in our life, and it manifests itself in energy that we carry in our body. The beautiful thing is that with so much grace, grace is the word. I used to watch the movie Grease when I was little, and there was that song, Grease is the word, but grace to me has been the word. To me, pivot and working with our anxiety is about radical, unapologetic self-acceptance and self-love. And it recognizes that even when we have the tools and strategies, let's say using the pivot methodology, we may have bouts of anxiety that come back. And I think the more we do the work and the more we do trust, the more I've learned to have that inner dialogue and have the grace to love every single part of me. I really try to connect to myself, like capital S, self energy, my spirit. And anytime I'm being hard on myself, or if I feel like, why am I having this anxiety? I try to really get curious about it. And I think about how old I was when that anxiety maybe started. And then I think about that younger version of me. And I think about the compassion and the love that she needs. And I connect to my breath. I never valued breath work so much as I have in these last 5 years, because our breath is our life. And even when we're feeling that anxiety, to just take a moment and pause and connect to our breath and give ourselves that moment and know that we are stronger than those thoughts that are causing the anxiety. A thought can be changed. And so for me, it's a combination of grace, compassion, and awareness. And I have found that as I have trusted that I am always being spiritually guided, even when I'm having the anxiety, I remind myself that it's happening for a purpose. And so the energy of it is coming up to get my attention to come out. It's getting my attention because our bodies are our greatest GPS. So when I'm feeling that anxiety, now I don't look at it as something that's wrong with me. I look at it as something that I can work with and befriend and heal and give myself the grace to know that it's not going to go away today or tomorrow, but with the help of that divine presence and with just that trust and that surrendered state and that grace for myself, it helps me to create more clarity around why I'm having the anxiety. I used to always have an anxiety attack, and then I would just be so far gone within my mindset. And now I recognize I can't create peace from chaos. So that time that we take for ourselves and take the pause and ask for that help, like you said, it's such a brave thing to ask for help, especially when it comes to the divine, because we're not meant to do it all alone. And then just feeling the pivot there, the shift is maybe this is happening for me. Maybe this is actually a signal to me of what I can actually heal so I can release it for good without judgment and with so much love and compassion along the way.
I love the way you framed that. And the word grace is so essential in my journey as well. And it's not something I've mastered. I am
Mm,
aware, especially when it comes to building a business from scratch and the level of anxiety that has triggered. Probably old anxiety that's in general just self-growth, personal level stuff, but then a new layer, additional layer, which is just building a business, and which seems to trigger all sorts of insecurities all the time. So when you said the word grace, I thought, wow, even the word grace sounds so soft. And
yes.
like words have vibrations, and the sounds have the vibration of something that's gentle. And when you mention also having that grace for yourself, I've noticed that when I have a friend who often comes to me, and um she can be so difficult to herself, not difficult, hard on herself.
Mm-hmm.
And I've known her for a long time, and each time I feel like nothing but kindness. I'm like, because she'll tell me, well, never judge me. Like, of
Mm-hmm.
course, I feel like to judge someone is to judge yourself.
Yes. Mm-hmm. We're
And
all mirrors.
we're all
We're,
mirrors, right?
and I think of life as really a learning experience, and we're always collecting data from every single person we meet, from ourselves. And I always ask myself, is this supporting my peace? Am I supporting myself? Am I being my best supporter? Am I following what lights me up? Is this what I'm passionate about? And when you speak to the anxiety and the insecurities that come from building a business, the because you're stepping outside of something and you're following your passion and you're following your path, I think we all experience that as entrepreneurs, as people who are trying to show other people what is possible by following our passion. But pivot has led me to trust that that when I commit to my passion and I give myself permission to know that the thing I am passionate about is the gift from God that I'm meant to birth into the world, me, authentic me. even if it's being done by someone else on social media. To me, another pivot is when you see examples of things in your life that are the things that are important to you, we can often so quickly go to the comparison or thinking that that's already being done. The pivot on that is to look at that as what Gabby Bernstein, who I've learned so much from, would consider to be driftwood, as these little signs and these little glimmers of what's available for you. That's the divine's way of saying, here's a sprinkle of what's coming for you. And I truly believe that when we open our hearts and give ourselves that permission and know we're worthy of following the path, it will open for us. And it's that co-creation with that highest part of ourself that knows us better than anyone or anything. I think we can sometimes hear what the external world expects of us, even the people that love us the most. But I've learned no one will know me better than I know myself. And we all are intuitive. That's listening to our heart. Wayne Dyer, I don't know if you're familiar with his work. He's no longer with us here, but he used to say to pray is to talk to God and ask for something or say what's on your heart. Intuition is God giving you your answer. And I think that when we have a passion for something, even when we have those anxieties, to allow the passion to continue to move us forward no matter what. Because I truly believe when we're attached to what we're here to do and we're using the gift we've been given, the path will open up. And I'm noticing that in my life over the last 5 years. Those first couple of years was actually rebuilding my nervous system. It was changing the story. And sometimes what I've learned is we want everything to happen so quickly. We want the business to come full circle so quickly. And we live in a society of instantaneous results, and we want it when we want it, and we want to know what the outcome is going to be, and we want to know how long it's going to take to get there and micromanage every step along the way. And what I have found is that when I release that and I surrender that, and I just follow the feeling of what feels good, and I take inspired action toward it every day. We need to give our energy a chance to shift and to pivot so that the external life and our life experiences can catch up. So for me, since the last time we talked, that's what these last 5 years have been. It's been building that peaceful, abundant energy from within. And it's so cool because now these opportunities are coming and life is taking the path that I know I'm meant to be on. And it's staying that course and never giving up on yourself no matter what. And knowing that the anxieties along the way are part of it, but to befriend those parts of you and to love yourself through it. Radical self-acceptance. I am worthy, I am worthy, I am worthy. I am enough. And I will follow my passion because that's what lights me up.
Oh, again, you speak to my heart. I just love having every nuance of what just came through you. I am so deeply connecting to it. It so deeply resonates. And again, I don't know where to start because of so many things you just shared. One of them, particularly, you were just talking about, and these weren't your words, but making that inner shift of the energy.
Mm.
And it reminded me of a couple of things. One is that what feels good, and often that can get complicated in terms of what society says, what other old habits and bad habits versus what energetically is aligned with your higher purpose.
Mm.
And
Yes.
what feels right or good, that energy attracts that energy. And the metaphor that I use is, imagine the Titanic, right? And
Yes.
often our minds, our old selves that are playing the old narratives, they're like the Titanic. They're going towards the iceberg.
That's
But now
a
that
great
you,
analogy. Yes.
but now you know, I need to go, I need to pivot. I need to pivot this enormous ship, which is lifetimes of karma, lifetimes of mental attitude. And in this life, you're really trying to pull it together. I can speak for myself that I work so hard to improve me on the inside out. And I know I want to go there. I think that's where the universe is telling me to go. But it takes a while. And sometimes, like you were saying, though, grace, because we want it. We want it now. We want to see the results. And we live in such a material world that if you don't see it, other people will judge. And then it's easy to judge ourselves.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I think the unconventionality of pivot is because when we pivot, we are giving ourselves permission to see something beyond the perspective of what our logical human minds can comprehend. We are really connecting with the spiritual higher part, not only of ourselves, but of the presence of the of the divine that we connect to. And it's lifelong and it's just daily practice. And I'll share with you a quick story. Recently, I have a fear ever since I was a little girl. I have feared getting sick. And if you know me, I love working out. It's just I love movement. I have always been healthy. I feel great. I'm going to be 48 in a few weeks, but there is a subconscious, deep-rooted fear. And I recently spoke to a friend who's a spiritual medium, and she had said that there was so much that came from even past life, like you were just saying, past life energy, and the whole idea of things with my parents and my broken home, and I've carried it with me. And recently I found myself being hard on myself, thinking, but I have pivot and I've learned to release all these other things. Why is this fear still so prevalent? And it's amazing how the right teacher will come at the exact right time, because all I did was I said, I am so ready to release this fear. Thank you, Spirit, for helping me to be more gracious with myself. And thank you for giving me the tools, the strategies that I need to release this for good. I am willing to do that. And I trust you are there to help me. Because as someone who understands the power of energy, it's really hard to tell someone who's spent their life with anxiety that what you focus on expands and what you think about comes about, because then we can start to fear our own thoughts. And that's not going to help us to love ourselves more. And so I was going through this period where I was being a little extra hard on myself and reminding myself of the grace. And Gabby Bernstein came out with a new book called Self-Help. It was the missing piece to my healing puzzle that I want to share with Pivot, because she was the one who said, check in with yourself. Ask yourself how long that's been there. When I connected with myself as a little girl, watching my mom and dad arguing and being so afraid, all of a sudden the judgment of myself and why I had that fear was gone. I just wanted to protect her. And I wanted to give her and her little pigtails a hug. And so when we can compassionately connect to parts of us that were just doing what we could to survive, and recognize we've always just been trying to protect ourselves, but we needed every version of ourselves to get to where we are right now. And we'll need this version to get to where we are. And so that book just a few weeks ago gave me that extra layer of grace to say, it's okay if I'm afraid, because my fear is not my belief. And it gives us permission to be afraid, because that's what makes us human. And I think allowing ourselves to embrace all of it, the spiritual and the human, and to allow ourselves to move through it wherever we are with that love and grace. I hope that makes sense.
Yes, it absolutely makes sense. And the reason being is it's a little subtle of a concept, but when we talk about spirituality, at least for me, often it feels like you need to mute those emotions because it's you're connecting to something higher and bigger and you transcend all of that. But then when we talk about being human, it's like, well, I'm afraid, I'm this, I'm that, but am I am I because I'm really a soul and I shouldn't be coming down to the level of thinking I'm the body. So they're always constantly like in duality, these two type of emotions.
Yes. And there is a woman, her name is Marianne DeMarco. She explained it so beautifully. She said, if you think we are spiritual beings, but we're living a human experience. So we are experiencing life as humans for a reason in order to get to the highest evolution of our highest self, to become the highest expression of ourselves. So as humans, that's where that grace comes in. And she showed a visual where she'd say, okay, if I'm human and I'm here, and here's, let's say, the angels and God and the universe, whatever resonates with us. That's why we call it mediumship, because we raise our vibration and that higher divine presence meets us where we are so that we can see things from a more spiritual lens. But if we were always vibing at our absolute highest, we wouldn't be experiencing human life. And I think it's so important to give ourselves that grace that we do not need to be energetically perfect. We do not have to be perfect in any way. That will never be on the menu. And every time that our body has some kind of dissonance or contrast, that's our body being our best friend saying, here's something that we can work with. But if I don't feel the fear, if I don't allow myself to just have it and experience it, it will always remain. The best thing I can do is say, I'm going to experience this. I'm going to feel it all without the judgment. And I'm going to call in my angels. I'm going to call in that divine help. And with that help, I trust that in the divine right timing, this will come up to come out. And I think that there is something so peaceful in knowing that the fear is there to help us to feel it so it can leave and exit for good so we are at peace, but not because we have to fix anything or not because we have to change or because anything is broken, because peace is the purpose and our inner happiness is our birthright. And it's learning to work with it because it's just something that we've carried with us from a previous version of life that was hard. And that's where I think that grace comes in, is giving ourselves a break and saying, I did the best I could with the tools and strategies I have. Now I can do even more now that I'm aware that I can release it and it doesn't define me. It doesn't say who I am. My passion and love and light is who I am. That's where the spiritual piece comes in.
Oh, again, you spoke to my heart in all of that. So one word that summarizes the essence of what you just expressed is the word awareness.
Yeah.
And I feel like a deep part of what I practice almost as my non-negotiable every day, morning and night, is meditation, which allows me allows me to connect to God, the
Yeah.
universe, but it also as serves as a tool for greater awareness. And my own I would say traumas of this lifetime included the fact that I would get to a place where I wouldn't allow myself to feel. I wouldn't cry. I it would just be a level of numbness that carried on for years of my life. And as I've grown in this past several years in this mindfulness space, what I'm hearing over and over, and I'm sure you're aware that when we allow ourselves to become aware and then feel, then, like you were saying moments ago, then you can release it. And that's
Yes.
where the healing is.
Yes. Think of those tears as energy that needs to be released from your body. But we're also sometimes taught that we're not supposed to feel. So that's something that you may have been hard on yourself for, but think about what society makes us feel about connecting to our emotions sometimes, right? We become weak because we're soft. I say the exact opposite. I think living with an open heart and allowing ourselves to experience our emotions and knowing what's hard and working through it and with it, not around it or against it, and knowing that the answers are always from within us and we can always connect to that self energy within us. It's always available. It's just knowing we're worthy of that at every single moment of every day simply because we're here. And I love that every moment is an opportunity to say, I can pivot this. No matter what has happened before, my trauma is not the destiny. My passion is my destiny. And if it's not coming from a place of love, then that's not my truth. And it's giving ourselves that permission to know that life is meant to feel that way. And as we do that, I think we become the ripple effect for other people to show what's possible.
That's where transcending, the word transcending seems to come to mind, because you're aware of your human experience, but then you're also able to then transcend it because something is nudging you that you are so much bigger.
Yes. And I'd love to speak to what you were saying, Shilpa, about the meditation. If someone were to say to me, what has been the greatest game changer for you, other than asking for signs and receiving them and really feeling that presence, meditation has changed my life. If you had told me, even 5 years ago when I first started this work, that I would be sitting with clients and channeling for them, and that I would have the gift of mediumship and whenever I am sitting with a client, I will say thank you for allowing me to be a channel for the highest truth, love, healing, and light. I'm not someone who goes around channeling all day long. It's when I set that intention. I know that the only way that that came through was from sitting in that stillness with myself and giving myself that permission to make that appointment with myself every day as a non-negotiable. It took a lot of practice because I used to tell myself I was being really lazy, and I felt really guilty because I had laundry to do or I had other things I needed to do. And the greatest piece of advice that I could give anyone, sometimes the greatest work that we do is not the work where we have the to-do list. It's the work that allows us to feel the way we want to feel at our best, and allowing the to-do list to be based on the things that make me feel the best. And sometimes doing less, we receive more. And that's what meditation has done. It has brought forth the intuitive gifts. And I trust myself now. I trust myself. There are things in my life that are so important to me that have been years and years in the making, we'll say. And it's not to me a matter of, oh, it's not going to happen because it hasn't happened yet. I receive the signs, I get those synchronicities, and I know it's going to happen. But without the meditation to really hear that voice, it wouldn't happen. So it's amazing. The other day I was in meditation and I was praying about that fear about my health. And I heard spirit say, look for the one eye. And I thought, that's interesting. And sometimes we might think we're crazy. For anyone who thinks, gosh, I feel like I'm making this up because it's what I want to hear, because I'll often journal and ask spirit to write through me. And the things that come out will just amaze me. And I'll think, how did I possibly, but it's not really my words or my handwriting. So I heard look for one eye. So I go into where I work and there was a whole wall of posters of one eye. And then I went to another building, and next to the restroom was a sign with one eye. And I heard spirit say, look for one eye and you know that you're protected. We're with you. And all I constantly see this week is one eye. And it wasn't something I said out loud. I didn't say it so my phone would hear it. It came through during meditation and it has changed my life.
Well, here's my take on the one eye because of the spiritual path I'm
Mm,
on. You've probably heard of the spiritual eye.
yes,
When you
yes,
meditate, you see the light,
yes,
and that essentially see that one eye is you. And
yes.
you're connecting to that spiritual eye.
Oh, that's such a beautiful way that you said that. I don't think I've could have worded that better, that you're connecting to yourself. And perhaps that's why the mediumship comes through, because now you've got me thinking when I sit with a client, I'll take some essential oil if they're comfortable and I rub it right where their third eye is. And I
Mhm.
say a prayer to call in the highest truth, love, and light. And it just amazes me what comes through. And same thing with Reiki sessions, you're connecting to, it's so beautiful. And to me, it works so much better than that fear-based mentality that was in the front seat. Now I know that the fear will be there, but now I have the tools to know how to work with it and allow it to not scare me anymore and to really be a helper to me. It's just showing me what I need to continue to work on.
And
And that grace will always get us through.
absolutely. And I feel like kind of coming full circle to, so I could talk to you for another 10 hours because there's so much depth here. That pivot is more of a spiritual framework because it's subtle. But when the work is being done, meaning trusting and the meditation,
Mhm.
the pivot can occur very quickly, which is
It-
so, I mean, I think I'm going to be in tears because it wasn't just too long ago that I was at the, I go through phases, but I was going through a dark phase
Mhm.
and worked through. And that wasn't too long ago, but the pivot happened. And I feel
Yeah.
like a different person from just a few months ago.
And isn't it such a beautiful feeling, Shilpa, when you wake up one day and you're like, oh, this that would have bothered me a long time ago. And I understand that I don't need to take that personally right now, or this is happening for me. Everything's always happening for me. I don't need to even have to connect the dots. I'm just going to trust that it's all part of this beautiful tapestry and I'm worthy of getting to the best possible point for myself. And to me, that's the pivot. And it is very spiritual because we're connecting to that part of us to guide the way. And once we get there and once we experience those magical moments, and that's the word I have to use, it's magical, there's no unknowing that, there's no unfeeling that. And it's just the coolest thing as I'm going throughout my day and I see all these things and I'm like, wow, thank you. I know you're there with me. Thank you for that sign. The other day I said, can you please give me a sign that is so clear because I feel something coming? And the number pattern that came in, I had a payment of something that changed. And I was like, what, like I just get in such awe of it. But it's just, like you said, the awareness and looking around, look at what you're seeing, listen to the conversations you're hearing. Spirit is always communicating with us through people who become our earth angels, but it's always there. And the more we experience it, the more we trust it. And as that trust muscle builds, life just takes on a whole new magical meaning. And it's for all of us. It's really for all of us, no matter what has happened. There's no judgment. It's complete self-acceptance and worthiness of moving forward and on the highest expression of ourselves.
And it's something that you shared moments ago. I just wanted to go back to that because it ties with what you just said about everything's happening for you.
Mhm.
Something you said and made me think it's not to say we're not doing the work. It's not to say there's no effort. It's
Correct.
it's spiritual effort. It's daily. It's consistent. It can be choppy at times because then you have to remind yourself to keep moving forward.
Yes.
And so those non-negotiables become our, I hate to use the word ammunition because I'm very particular about my words. They become our tools.
Yes.
So like when you were talking about meditation and then feeling like, oh, I sit any longer? Maybe I need to do laundry, or is this considered laziness? I've been practicing most of my life. I've gone really dialed in the last few years. And this year, my word of the year is dialed in.
It's beautiful.
And it's because I'm truly becoming. And so when I was sitting in meditation, and I have this whole science reasoning why I have to do a minimum of 12 minutes. But when I hit the alarm, or the timer, if any thoughts go through my head where I'm like, I need to do X, Y, or Z. I'm like, no, this is the work. It doesn't feel like work, but it's actually the subtle work. It could be, in my brain, it needs the science behind everything. So my scientific brain's like, well, you're moving the energy up and down your chakra.
Yes.
You're
But
fine.
yes. And I think that's a pivot too. It's the work that we do is when we pivot is different than the work we're used to doing. I know for me, I was used to struggling for survival, and I would be so burnt out and I'd feel so overwhelmed. And it's not to say, like you said, that we don't do work, but things that contribute to a spiritual practice like meditation, journaling, affirmations, prayer, gratitude, that's work. Some of the greatest healing I did was when I gave myself that permission to do those things. Because if I kept going and doing the busy work, it didn't give me permission to feel the peace. I couldn't create the peace in the chaos that I was in. I can't do that from survival mode. So even my greatest passion is keynote speaking. It's sharing pivot with whoever I'm meant to share it with. So for me, I think of Sunday Sit Down, my lives on Facebook. I might not consider that to be work, but every time I do that, that's like, for me, I look at that as that's keynote speaking. That's me sharing pivot with the world. That is work. It's my passion. So it just is fun because I'm following the feeling of what feels right for me. If I want to write a book and I know why I'm writing it, the process of it might not always be easy, but it will be inspired. And I think that's been a huge pivot for me. I can't sit on the couch and expect life to just change for me. So I'm going to have my spiritual practice. And then I'm also going to be doing and taking action. But is my action aligned with my passion? Is my action aligned with the way I want to feel? And even the people that I'm surrounding myself with, are they aligned to support and to peace? Are they an expansion of my joy? Or do I feel like I'm walking on broken glass? Because if I do, I'm also going to give my permission to do the work to create the boundaries and without judgment, put light around it, say a prayer for it, and recognize it's just not in alignment. I've learned so much about how I never have to judge anything. All I have to do is stay in my lane and recognize, is this in alignment with me or not? And if not, I can say a prayer that it gets released in the most peaceful way possible. That takes the judgment out. Then I'm not observing and absorbing it all. I'm just staying in my lane and following the passion. And the work becomes action toward what the intention is. And that's a different kind of work.
Yes, and getting to the point in your life where your intention has clarity. First,
Mm,
have intention, and you're
yeah,
aware and consciously identifying your intention, then making sure it's aligned. That is part of the spiritual expansive growth. I feel like,
100%.
like when you were saying the work is, you mentioned a few things like the gratitude, the affirmations, the meditation. I have a list of all of that I practice. And often, sometimes I'll be like, okay, I can do the meditation, but can I sit down for another 30 seconds and go through my gratitude list, go through this, go through that? But that is the work.
Yes.
And if you want to be scientific and geeky about it, think of it this way, because I do this. Sometimes my scientific mind will be like, are you really going to spend another 2 minutes on your gratitude list? And I'll be like, well, the more I give energy to what I'm grateful for, the more I attract of that same kind, right?
Yes. Yes. I I believe that we create what we are. And if we are in an energy of love and belief that the things that matter most to us are things we're here to experience, that's the greatest pivot, is giving ourselves that permission to dream big. But if we think about anything that has worked in this world, it's all stemmed from the idea. and the awareness of the idea, and from someone who said, I'm not going to give up on this. And it's not for the lucky few, it's for anyone who, in their awareness of who they are and what they want to experience, commits to that. And the hardest part is releasing the timeline and the actual outcome. Because if I've learned that my job is to know what's important to me and how it makes me feel, how it happens, when it happens, who's involved, all of that. I don't have to have that on my shoulders. That's where I can have that divine support and allow life to unfold in the most beautiful ways. And it does. I can promise you, if I can do this, anyone can do it. I know the level of anxiety I came from. And so I just know it's just for anyone who says, yes, I'm going to pivot this and I'm going for it. This is what my heart tells me. And it's telling me that for a reason. And on the reverse, when my body is telling me that something doesn't feel right, it's okay for me to acknowledge that too and say, maybe this is something that no longer serves me. Maybe it once did. Maybe it was once the next best decision, but it doesn't have to be the next best decision now. That's the evolution of our soul and our spirit.
And speaking of evolution, I do believe that when you align and start giving energy into your passion, such as on entrepreneurship or working with clients like you have been, like you were saying earlier, you can't expect it to happen overnight. It's a journey, it's a process. A lot of trust goes into it. And one of the metaphors I've been feeling lately, and it's nice to have you here to talk about it, is being an entrepreneur who's going through this expansive state. I've learned that the process of being an entrepreneur is teaching me a lot about my spiritual mindset and growing spiritually. I feel like there's so many parallels because I have to check in with my mindset. I have to check in with my level of consistency. My tools that help me remain strong are the very tools that help me grow as a soul. So
Yes,
meditation is also pivotal for me, no pun intended, for um, it, my business as well as my personal. So it turns out sometimes when you're in alignment with what gives you a feeling of passion, like what you're doing
mm-hmm.
with your clients or what I'm building, it's often when you're truly doing it with the right intention, you are in alignment with who you are.
Yes,
Does that make sense?
100%. And I even think about the last time you and I met, your business has expanded because now it's opened up the road to supporting people in using more of their social media platforms, right? Through the AI and through all of those different formats. And think about how that's evolved for you and a passion that has grown within you from following the passion.
Well, and there's so much
I
there
think
that
that's so cool.
I could unpack that into another episode with you. But one thing you've been using a word through all of our conversation, I think it's come up, is authenticity. And one of the signature tools I'm creating and a program I've created is called Amplify Authentically. And I feel
Hmm.
like a lot of what I'm doing or meant to do is to allow people to amplify their true authentic voice. And so tools like spiritual technologies like meditation or tools like AI or social media strategy, these are all there to support your expansion, whether it's on a personal level or a business level or both.
Yes, 100%. And that it's amazing to me how, as you have been following this pathway, these new opportunities and these new creative ideas are channeled through you. And that's why you're doing them, right? Because those ideas that we get, I truly believe are given to us as spiritual gifts. And the more, like you said, we're connecting to ourselves. We're seeing ourselves. I'm seeing that I, right? So it's like we see the highest version of ourselves. And I truly believe the more we see it, the more is revealed. It's like the highest version showing us. Whenever I get a vision, I always feel like it's that higher version of me saying, here's what's going to happen. And I have certain things that are so part of my heart that I know I'm here to experience. There's something, and we'll have to share it on another one when it all happens. But I want to say this is like a 30-year like thing that I have felt. I will never give up on it because it is me. It is who I am. And so I will never look, with pivot especially, I will never look at the timing of something, even if whether it takes 5 days, 5 years, 15 years, I will always trust that anything that is truly meant for me will never pass me by. And if it's something I feel at that soul level, it's not a matter of if, it's just the alignment. It's timing. It's when the stars align, so to speak, so that when these good things come, we are energetically within our nervous system ready and prepared to accept them and receive them and maintain them. Because so often something good might happen and we'll say, oh, it's too good to be true. So I truly believe that the pause in this space is aligning our life, our minds, our bodies to what we're meant to experience. And we like to rush it, but in spiritual time, there is no rush. And so to enjoy the present moment and to trust ourselves and to trust what's guiding us, even if it doesn't make any sense, I will say that. There are things to me, they make no sense whatsoever, but they feel right. And I will follow them until they no longer feel right. So.
Oh man. Okay. So you probably understand this when you feel a surge of energy going up your spine when certain thoughts. Right now, when you said that, it was as though like a wave of energy and goosebumps occurred. I was on a walk with my son yesterday, and I now meet him at his school bus where he gets dropped off because towards the end of last 2 years, I've been consciously trying to make a shift where I'm not so focused on the nuance and details of action, but trying to step away to be more present. And I don't want it to ever be too late to be more present, if that makes any sense.
Never too late.
Yeah. And so I'm constantly making adjustments. And one of them this year is improving my health and stacking it on a habit that allows me to still remain present. So I thought I can go for that walk up that steep hill, but meet my son there. So this habit, being present with him. And what occurred to me, this is again synchronicity. I know you'll like this one. I was listening to a podcast, and his bus had just arrived, and the woman in the podcast had said she's a famous entrepreneur. She said she needed to understand when she was trying to have children and she would have miscarriages, which I can relate to, that there's a season for every part of your life.
Yeah.
And she said that maybe I need to accept that in this season of my life, I'm in pause.
Yes.
But when the next season arrives, you can then truly be present. And then his bus arrived.
How beautiful is that?
And he got off the bus, and like, I waited for him for so long.
Yes. And I think I can share with you there's a pause happening in my life, a very long pause for something that means the world to me. Number one, the feeling that it brings me, knowing how important it is to me, will always lead me through the pause. But when you think about those challenging times that we've been through, when those things come in, when we've had the pause and we've experienced the challenge, the gratitude and the appreciation for those things will never, ever be taken for granted. And sometimes I look back on some of my most challenging moments within the area that's so important to me. I'm so grateful for them, because when it is my time for, and I keep receiving signs for it, so I know it's on the way, I'll let spirit surprise me. But I'll know what I have gone through to get there. And I will not take one moment for granted. And it will have meant everything to me because it's so important. And I think that sometimes the challenges help us to know what true appreciation is, right? Without the challenge, we'll never understand how to appreciate it. And I'm grateful for the pause actually at this point, because without the pause, I wouldn't have developed all of this. I I know that spirit needed me to develop this and put certain other things on pause. And I'm okay with that because it's taught me so much. And the appreciation when those things arrive, in their greatest form. It's not up to me how it arrives, but I trust. That's the thing about the pivot. I trust it. Those affirmations and the meditations and the visualizations and the journaling. I mean, journals and journals and journals. I know that the energy that's put into that, what we put out comes back. When we put out love, it's coming back. When we put out passion, it's coming back. So to anyone listening, we've got to keep on keeping on and never give up on something that makes our heart just come alive. And that's going to look different for all of us. I feel that the greatest abundance that we can ever experience in our life is not material, but it's peaceful. It's happiness. It's joy. It's feeling like who we are is enough, and we accept ourselves, and we live every day saying, I'm proud of myself. And we look at ourselves in that mirror and we say, you're doing a good job and I've got your back. And we'll continue to do that every day, and we're going to go for it. Because while I'm here and while I'm breathing, that's what I'm going to do. That's my birthright. That's the pivot.
That's the pivot. I'm going to have you back again because
I would love to be back because I could go on all day. So I'm sorry if I spoke too long.
No, actually, I could easily talk for another half hour, an hour. There's so many things that are bubbling up in my mind and consciousness, but we'll just make a point to have you back for the spiritual season.
I would love that.
Well, maybe in a month or two, so that because my the season of spirituality lasts for 3 months, so we'll have you back before the season ends.
Perfect. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored to be a part of it.
I'm so honored to have you in my life as a friend,
Oh,
fellow person who gives me inspiration. Thank you.
oh. Thank you so much, Shilpa. I feel the same way about you. And again, there's the synchronicity, right? People are placed in our lives as our angels, and we've never met in person, but isn't it beautiful to have a connection and just know that you're meant to be in each other's lives? That's very grateful for that.
Oh, it is. And we've never met face to face, but it's a friendship.
Yes, it's a very cool one.